Hello, everyone. We are just starting another webinar for talking about talking about technology in the dental field. This is my third webinar, and I'm very pleased to be here again, as we have people from all over the globe. The idea is to share with you some of the digital integration using implant therapy. I will be going through some examples, and of course, as we have people from different parts of the planet, I would like to put everybody on the same page. And more than really showing how software works and showing how a technique is doing, I would like to share how I really interact with the digital environment. I have done that for the last webinar, which was about Smile Design, and you see that in all cases, even implant cases, I've been designing at least some proportion and give patients some idea, and I'll be sharing that with you in a moment. So then the digital integration is pretty much what I am really here to share with all of you. I always like to put everybody on the same page that we have now scanners. We have the desktop scanner, which is scan models, you scan impressions, and you have the intraoral scanners, which is meant for initially for intraoral scanning. But again, you can use your intraoral scanner to scan model as well. So you can have softwares that can really do some of the work. Some of the impression can be also scanned, but I would not recommend that. So it's your choice which route you go for the scanners, but there is no doubt that we all need to capture information in our practice on a daily basis. One thing that I always tell people, and this is what I have in my practice in my office, is an intraoral scanner, a Trios from TreeShape, which is the sponsor of this webinar. Is I don't consider a scanner only to scan things, only to take impression, or I would say virtual impression with a scanner. I use it for other things. And we're in a time in our world now that data means something. So if you start looking into a scanner as a data archiver, you see that you have a lot of information that would benefit your business and would benefit your patient, which is the most important component in the whole chain of a treatment and even in the technology. So your patient is the target. So having the possibility for collecting information from the beginning, during treatment, and at the end is the key nowadays that you can succeed, that you can show your patient what you're doing. Patient can be engaged. And then at the end, you have something that even protects you against lawsuits, for instance, if one would come, because you have initial data that you collected, and then during the treatment, another data, and at the end. And on the implant therapy, which is the topic that I will be sharing with you, I will show how I really work at environment. I like to also give you guys some hints of books that could be read about technology, even for implants, for conventional prosthodontics and so on. A new book for quintessence, which called Digital Dentistry, you see on your right side. I wrote the chapter Conventional versus Digital Prosthodontics, which addresses that difference, that discrepancy, and shows one very important component that digital and analog, they are not separate worlds. They are together and they complement each other. We need both. We need to understand the basics. We need to understand how biology works. We need to understand, in our case, in dentistry occlusion. We need to have a very deep understanding of several aspects in dentistry that will lead us to success. And I also wrote a book with Jonathan Ferrens from New York City, which calls Fundamental of CAD/CAM Dentistry. This is a book for the American College of Prosthodontics, ACP. And those are the books that I would recommend nowadays for people interested in reading more information about digital dentistry. When we come for implants, which is what we are facing now,
I was trained, I'm actually in Brazil now, and I used to be quite some time in New York City working for NIU. I was trained for less intervention and more preservation. That's the phrase that I keep in my lectures now when I go talk about implant therapy. Why? Because we know the implant can be successful, but we also know that implant can fail. And we cannot make miracles on working on an implant therapy. So more important than really place an implant, being a nice surgeon to place an implant, is to know if the implant is the right treatment for the patient. Is to know that you can or you cannot save a tooth. So less intervention and more preservation. And then when you come for scanning, intraoral scanning, when you propose a patient that you can monitor the patient, maybe you can save one tooth and keep monitoring it with x-rays and also intraoral scanning. So this gives you a less intervention and you preserve more teeth. We need to really focus on the preservation. But we are in a time where implant therapy is available, and we all need to understand that implant therapy is important to all of us. Here is pretty much one thing that I like to show, regardless if an implant, if a restorative, aesthetic cases. Patient comes in, I scan it, or the assistant scans, and we also go for some design, very simple. The last webinar about smile design can give you that, few clicks. You can have a proposal that gives you a sense where you are. You're not saying that that's the treatment the patient will get, but you are just giving a hint that things can be done. And then you do multiple scans during the treatment from the beginning until the end. That's the key. And I think this is the most successful way to engage technology in the practice. Either if you do surgery, either if you do only restorative, either if you do prosthodontics mix, and so on and so on. This is universal. And I hope one of the cases that I will start showing to all of you, I will really go in details step by step, even for complete dentures nowadays. The last case I have to show you here is a complete denture that precedes a implant therapy, and I do some smile design, and you're gonna see why. So I'm Nelson Silva. This is my Instagram. I have several videos, several pictures on digital, just little tips and hints. Also my email, the university that I belong to, UFMG here in Brazil. And I'm very proud for what I have accomplished. So I used to teach at NYU for about 10 years in my career. 5 years ago I moved back to Brazil, but I keep a very strong relationship around the globe with my colleagues, my partners, and my people who I have close relationship, and we discuss the same topics, and we agree in a lot of the thinking process that one needs to understand when it goes for development of skills on the digital environment. 3Shape has a software that is called Implant Studio. In my presentation, you're going to see Implant Studio being used by me. Some cases I have developed myself, some I have outsourced. And this is what we face now. We in the practice, we have a busy practice, and depends on the treatment you are proposing. Sometimes it's really time consuming to design. For instance, if you have overdenture, I'm going to show a case of overdenture. It takes some time. But single units, one can design if you wish. It depends on the math that you do, based on your business model and the hour and the practice and so on and so on. And also what gives you pleasure, right? For me, for instance, to design a crown, to design an implant like single implants, I do it with pleasure. And I try to balance the pleasure with the profit, of course, otherwise no one can pay the bills. So Implant Studio has some advantages and some very important components. One is, for instance, you drive your prosthetic component for the implant treatment. So you drive the prosthetic planning, which is very important. So you can have it's an open system platform that you can have some files come in, and you can also export some files. The workflow is flexible, which is important. You need flexibility when you do it, right? And becomes a software that it's very intuitive. That's my perception. That's my feeling. One can say that you have much more complete softwares available out there, I would agree, but depends on what you need for your business. And of course, the sequence involves a scan, then you plan, then you design, then you print or mill. We can discuss about the cost of printing and mill, but most of the guides now are printed. Then you can manufacture your restoration, you go for the surgery or the temporary, and you go for the surgery. But here is the complete, the way that is you can see on the website. But for you in this audience, I would add another component, which you scan in the beginning, and then you can scan after the surgery, which makes a very interesting approach of tracking down what you're doing. And one of the cases I will be presented to you, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see some of this happening after surgery and then during the healing process, and how that can be really important to all of us doing a treatment plan. So let me just show a video. You can find this video on the website that belongs to 3Shape. But the video really states how a software like the Implant Studio that belongs to 3Shape works in terms of making a treatment plan. For if you want to do 2 implants on the left of the mandible, so you have the scan, the CBCT, and then you line them up as you guys are seeing here. This could be very simple for the majority of the people watching, but I think puts all of us on the same page. Here, what you're seeing with the color scale is if the alignment is really good enough, then you can approve the alignment. Then you're going to detect the mandibular nerve. It's a very straightforward process to do. You see that you track down where the mandibular nerve is located. And after that, you wax up the tooth. In this case, two teeth are being waxed up for the molar region. And then you balance it up, you make the occlusion, you find the best position for the tooth. This can be done by a lab technician, this can be done by yourself, this can be done by outsourced design company, and so on. So you check occlusion, you can go automatic to have the occlusion be set properly. Here is your teeth designed, and then you're gonna go to design your night guard, your guide. So you have the sleeves position, then you work with the implant. So this software has this give that gives a little safe zone where the implant should be located. Then you use the concept that you usually use for implant therapy. Then you just go back and forth, position the sleeves on the best possible position, and you have your guide designed and ready to be fabricated. So we can have an association of this combined with temporaries, that you can have the guide and the temp that can be designed. Of course you can do it, but here is just in a simple matter how the software is very easy and so intuitive to do. So here, one thing that I also point out is when you outline your surgical guide, as you guys are seeing here, you're going to open windows. I suggest that you open as many windows as possible that make sure that the guide sits perfectly on the teeth. If there is any displacement, please be careful, because you can really, this can really incur in error, and then your implant will be off, and this could be not a good sign for what you are proposing to do. So it is that way that you make the integration. Get a software, get a scan, get a CBCT, a good CBCT. One thing that I've been asking my CBCT people is use spandex for the CBCT. Not only this, has the mouth semi-open, because when you want to work and section the mandible and the maxilla, when you have them in occlusion, sometimes it's very difficult for you to separate the two jaws. Depends on the design you're doing. Some designs you can have the CBCT being done with the mouth shut, but most of the cases I ask for a semi-open mouth for the CBCT. And then you have a scan, a good scan, you line them up, go for the design. Is a software kind of a step-by-step. And this is just a software training, and this is not the purpose of the presentation that I have here for you guys. So let's see the first implant case. And in this first implant case that I will be sharing with you, just for this inspiration that I hope I can give to the people watching my presentation is you implant plan and you monitor what you're doing. So you're going to see that I start to scanning my patient at first, and then I plan the implant, and then place the implant, and then scan the patient, and then produce the restoration, and then scan the patient until you finish. And then what you're creating is a timeline. And that's the word that we all must have in mind. It's timeline. I timeline my patients. I make my patients understanding that I will start from the beginning, and I will scan, and I will keep a control of the processes that I'm developing. First time in dentistry that we have the opportunity to incorporate quality control in our office. And this is the case that I will be sharing to you right now. So here is the patient. And when this patient come, and I was really looking into start like this timeline process, which I would call tissue monitoring. I would like to monitor how the tissue behave after implant is placed, even if you graft, how this whole process works. Because now the only way that one can track down how our procedures such as tissue grafting, bone grafting, so on, is via CBCTs. This is not easy to be accepted by patient to be CT'd very many times. This is not what patients are looking for. But however, if I can scan the patient, which is not incorporating heavy radiation, so I would be able to track down what I'm doing and what the procedures that I have done. So here's one case that I will go is missing the number 12. So in the US, this would be the number 8. No, I'm sorry, the number 7. I don't know. One American guy can correct me, but this is the number 12 in the European standards. And when I start like looking into it, okay, patient is looking for an implant, and let's see how we develop that. So one thing that I always do when a patient comes looking to change or to make just one single unit in the front region is to smile design the patient. I'm not going to show smile design here. That's not the purpose of my presentation. But I would like you guys to keep always thinking in looking the patient, even for a single restoration, from outside to inside. So get a face picture, do a smile design of the patient very fast. Now the softwares available can really give you a very fast design that gives a sense where you are. It doesn't need to be so perfect. Perfect could be the next step. As I always teach people, my belief is if you want to really develop the whole design concept, you should have 3 steps. First step, I would call motivational buy-in. What motivational buy-in is? Patient comes, patient would like to change that restoration. Of course, in this case, as you can see the scan, I could change other things for the patient, but he was just looking for this change in restoration. But the time that you do a design, patient looks you differently because you're doing something else on the first visit. And then you go and say and make the proposal of the patient. So you have the motivational buy-in, first visit, consultation, engagement. Then you have the second, which I would call motivational training. If you're using multiple units, for instance, so if you can do a training or a mock-up, whatever name you want to give to it, test drive, that would be the second step. However, patient bought the treatment on the first visit on the motivational buy-in because you engage the patient. When the patient comes from the second one, is because the patient wants you to do the treatment. And then it's just you doing a training to make sure that things will be at least similar or close to what you are proposing. And then on the third step would be the case execution. It's you doing the case. So those are the 3 components that you should keep in mind. Very fast processes and procedures as long as you speed up your knowledge and understanding of computers. But here's our patient. I designed. I showed him some design, and the patient was not looking into changing some of the composite. You're going to see as we move forward here. and I start like immediately making the treatment plan using Implant Studio. So here was one of the first cases I have done. It's a pretty straightforward process. You open up the software, then you select what exactly you're looking for, and after you select what exactly you're looking for, you're going to incorporate the scan plus the CBCT, the DICOM files from the CBCT. It's a large files, just keep in mind that, but you need to ask to the CBCT place that you have the CBCT from, or from your own CBCT if you have a large clinic, and if you have a very busy clinic that you can have your own CBCT. Then what you're going to do is you're going to integrate all these components, the scan and the CBCT. Here is one thing that I would like to tell you. At least here in Brazil, it happens to me, and I've been pushing some ortho people to not ask for a CBCT with braces unless it's strictly necessary. Why? Because you can have scatter when you CBCT, and that can make difficult your alignment. One example is in this case, because the patient in the beginning, as you saw the first scan, the patient had the CBCT with the ortho braces on, as you all can appreciate here. So this makes things a little difficult. But anyways, I was able to line them up. And here is one case that I did myself, I'm sharing with you. So the planning and the surgery I did myself. Same sequence as the first video you guys have seen. You see that you have the red component, the green component based on the color scale that you have on the right side here on this first picture. So this shows me that I have a very close or precise alignment between the CBCT and the scan, the intraoral scan that I have gotten. So this is something that it's very important to check. So after, when you have this lined up, you go for the wax up. Same sequence as I have shown on the video that you guys have seen in the beginning. Then what you do after the wax up, the virtual wax up you have done, you're going to select your implant, and then you're going to start positioning the implant selected based on your knowledge, based on the philosophy of work, based on your implant preference. There are tons of implants available on the software, and you position your implant for the case being done. In this particular case, as you all can appreciate for people doing implant, as you can see, I would, to improve the positioning of the implant, it would happen a fenestration. I would have a fenestration on the buccal aspect of the implant. I could make the implant longer. I could really go a little more than that. Nowadays, I'm working mostly on 10 to 11 and a half implant length. I'm not going more than that. I don't see need unless it's really something out of the chart. But most of the cases I'm doing with 10 to 11 and a half implant length. That's pretty much my norm now. Anyway, so you can go, and this is a fenestration. So as I have a fenestration, I will need to graft it. That's why when I did the clinical evaluation of the patient, I knew that I would have a fenestration coming in, and then I would need to graft. And I would like to track down this grafting, how this graft have been really developed or evolved along the period of the healing process and some years ago. And some years, and as the years goes by, I would really track down that. So here what you're going to see is the guide designed, as you appreciate on the first video. That's why the first video is very important, that we can skip details on how this was done. See that even in this one, which is a very short span kind of guide, I will open windows. I open 1, 2 windows on the central. I open from the buccal side to the lingual side, because this gives me the right view when I'm positioning the guide. Some people could ask, Nelson, don't you think that the guide with several windows would be fragile and that could not work properly? Well, it depends how you design it. I will show here another option that one could have on guides that use what's called tubular design, and I don't see any fragile aspect of it. So it depends on how you design. As many windows as possible, as long as the guide is not really thin and it's not really flexible, and then you could be okay to go. So after the guide is designed, here is the STL, as you're appreciating here. You have now the option of milling or print. In this case, I did both. Why I did both? Because I would like to really understand how this works, right? How the whole process works. Just keep in mind for people that if you have an STL file that was designed for printing, it may not really give you a good mill guide. Why? Because every time you design something, the information that you design, that you provide, for instance, for the printing, goes into the STL file. So if you create your file using a strategy for milling, then your STL will have the information for the milling. This differentiate them, which means if you have an STL design, this is a very important topic. If you have an STL designed for printing, can you mill it? Well, you can mill it, but you're not going to have the more precise information for the milling if you have designed that one for milling alone. So this is really important. So you have the STL for printing, send it for printing. But if the STL is designed for milled, don't send for printing, because you ended up in having some distortions and some errors that can lead for an issue when you're doing the surgery. Just be careful, this is a very important component. So even when I position my implant during the fenestration, here shows to me that my restoration would go buccally, right? I would have that inclination. I have shown this case for the people and other guys. I said, Nelson, why don't you fenestrate more? Well, I wouldn't go to fenestrate too much and to trust in a lot of bone grafting. We were facing a time where bone grafting is giving us such inconsistent data, maybe in my hands, but I've been seeing some issues on when one fenestrates too much and then you rely on some bone grafting. But anyways, here is what I have. A split file was designed for the crown, meaning with that inclination, I would need to get an abutment separated than the crown. Usually I go straight for the crown using the links. You're going to see here how I have done. But anyways, guide is in place. Surgery was open, guide in place. As you can see here, the fenestration happened. Maybe the slides here needs to be moved differently here. But as the guide is placed, you go for the implant placement. In this case, particularly, unfortunately, we did not use the guide for placing the implant because we are missing one component to make the guide perfectly ready for using during the implant placement. But anyways, we use the burrs, we track it down, then the implant comes and we do the implant without guides. We would say this is a semi-guided process. Then we grafted this. We use a strong implant, and we graft using the 4-bone, now 4-matrix from MIS, and we put a membrane, and we close that up. And after I close that up, I scan the patient. I don't do that anymore because we have a lot of swelling here. And then whatever data you would like to extract from this will not be really precise because the swelling is really visible here. But anyways, I scan the patient again. See, is scanning the beginning. Then you can maybe scan the patient during the treatment. That's the message I want to give to you. So you scan it during the treatment. And then you're going to scan, as in this case, as the healing process goes. And then you scan when the restoration is finished. Doesn't take that long. Just give you more security for the process you're doing. Patient feels safe and comfortable when you do it. They like it. And they will tell other people, listen, my doctor scans me as the treatment goes and I see what's happening. It's really nice and I feel confident
for the treatment that my dentist is proposing. So then when the healing process comes, you're going to go and get scan bodies for the design, the final restoration. And here what I did, so I put a scan body, which it's a very common procedure now. I think this is not things to be discussed. So the scan body is there, then you select the scan body based on the implant system, and then you line in the software the scan body, the virtual scan body in the software to the scan body that you have scanned, that they match, and now I have my implant positioned on the right spot to design my restoration. So here is the design process, and as I told you, I would do two files. One file would be an abutment, and the other file would be a crown. So here is a zirconia abutment that I designed, and then an IMAX crown over the zirconia abutment to design the restoration. Here is the IMAX that was cut for the IMAX. The zirconia abutment is on one side. I have in my office a rolling machine, which I mill the IMAX, and then I outsourced the abutment for zirconia abutment. We have in Brazil a quite interesting component which is called precision link, that you really lock in the abutment component. This is a zirconia abutment component locked in, and then you screw it in, and then over the abutment I will cement the crown that I have done. So here is the final restoration, as you were appreciating on my left side here is the final restoration. And the patient did not want to change those composites. Remember that I have done a design, and I saw some lack of proportion on those teeth, but that's what he was looking for. No problem at all. So components in place, crown cemented, and then what I did was I polished all these composites, and I made some photographs of the composite being polished, and we can have some improvements without changing, and that's not what the patient was looking for. I always hear what the patient is asking me. Even for cases when you need to do veneers, listen what the patient is asking for. We tend to offer things that we think is important to us, dentists. But no, we need to listen what the patient is asking for. Here is the final restoration. I think it's reasonable. It's the date of cementation. You still have some information still from the cementation that we have provided after the polishing, which looks okay, could be much better than that. But then what I do is I scan the patient. Less time. So I do this combination of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 scans during the healing process. And why I did that? Remember that I have grafted the patient. I did a graft on the patient. And when we graft the patient, we never know what's going to happen. So looking into the grafting process, I would like to track down, and if I can have some information who's using only the scanner, if I can have some information about the grafting that I have performed on the patient. So what I do is pretty much is a file overlay. So all these files is overlaid. There is a transition here, but it's okay. And here is how I timeline this patient, this implant patient. So I started doing scanning, then a very fast design to see the teeth proportion, and then implant studio, which I designed the implant placement based on the wax up that I have done for a tooth. Then I just keep tracking the healing process, scanning many times, and then I have the restoration done. See, I have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 scans of this patient just to see how this grafting process works. This year, in May, I scanned this patient again. I finished the treatment of this patient January 2017. And now in May, after 1 year and some, couple months, I scanned him again just to see how this graft area is performed. So let's see what we can extract from that. Here is a very nice video of the whole process of overlaying scans, as you can appreciate here. So this is the 6 scans overlaid in a video, and then even in the temperature that is a little longer, when I match the tooth dimensions, here is the discrepancy. This gives us a lot of information and also a lot of potential of research, potential of understanding
all the techniques we are using for grafting tissue, for grafting biomaterials, as you're going to appreciate on the next slides that are coming up. Here is one of the slides. Here is again the 6 scans overlaid. When you see that, is the colors bar that gives, you know, the thickness or the amount that was changed. Of course, one can ask Nelson, how about the differences in scanning when you're scanning? Yeah, you can have some tissue more stretched than others. You can have some, frenum position to the left and to the right. This is something that we are trying to work around now using artificial intelligence somehow. But anyways, what matters is where you have scans that really match to the previous, for instance, teeth, for instance, areas, papillas surrounding the teeth. So those are very static, or not static, I would say static, but they are very good references for planning. This software, which is the monitoring software that is also in the same software where you have the implant studio and also the designing for the prosthesis, allows you to cross-section. You selected 2 timelines, 2 dates on the timeline, and then you can cross-section and read or measure what you have gotten so far. So here is the overlaying of 2 scans on my timeline. On the day 1, which was the beginning, and on the day 6, that I would say, when the end of the treatment with the crown in place. So the yellow is the beginning, and the blue is the last scan, which is the 6th scan, the 6 scans that I have done. Of course, I have showed you that I added another scan, but this is the 6 scans that you have available here. So now, when I see the number 3.75 millimeters means when I place my implant, when I grafted it using the bone, as you guys are appreciating, on the lower right corner of your screen. So it gives me 3.75 millimeters gaining tissue. Very important information. Now, when I go and I get this scan 1 year and couple months after, and I cross-section it again, what I see is from the last scan, which when the crown was placed, for the most recent one, I lost 0.5 millimeter of the tissue. Wow, meaning after 1 year and almost a half, 0.5 millimeters of my graft was gone. Assuming that this data is correct, we have, ladies and gentlemen, in our hands a very powerful method to identify the difficulties on the implant therapy, especially when you graft immediately after implant is placed. We needed to understand that much better. So that's the integration, that's the digital integration that I have in my practice. So I start from scanning, and then I design to have a little sense what I can offer to my patient. If the patient doesn't want to do any of this, I go and I plan my implant. Or you can outsource all of this if you want to, depends on the business model that you have. And then I can scan and track down my patient and really give him a little hint in what is happening. Every single patient would be very happy if you really show him what you have done and how the work you have done is performed. In this case, of course, we still have some improvements to read this data, and I would love to, but I will track down more often this patient because I have already some indication that the graft to the bone has been reduced 0.45 millimeters from the last scanning, which was the end of the treatment. Is important data that we need to consider. Let's go for implant case 2 that tracks down the same thing in different concepts. Not only you scan the patient at the beginning, but using the scanner trees especially, you can really map shades and see how you can match shades. It's a single implant that is missing. I could graft the tissue here on the top. Patient was not willing to graft any tissue. Patient would like to place an implant if possible.
if grafting is on the scope, I would graft first and then would place the implant and so on. But anyways, this is what the proposal that we have given. We're going to place an implant and using the same sequence that you guys have already seen. Implant planning using the Implant Studio. You get the CBCT, you get a scan, then you match the files, overlay them, you do the wax up, position your implant on the best position possible. You can do this in-house, in lab. You can send for print or mill. I already explained what I think about print and mill. Don't send the same STL file. The STL file for printing must be for printing. STL file for mill must be only for milling. Implant is in place. Then you go for the restoration. Well, I have already showed that on the restoration, we use scan flags, single units for restorative work using implants. It's very simple, straightforward. I would go for a bridge as well, but we still have some difficulties on using when you have fully edentulous patient. Fully edentulous patient, if you're trying to do a hybrid, I would wait a little bit until the scanning process, the whole scanning method improves from one arch, from one end to the other. So if you go for that, make sure that you are scanning correctly because you have seen some issues not only with the Trios scanner, but also with all the scanners. So we've been very cautious to do it. I've been successful in doing some, but sometimes I still have some small discrepancy. Things are getting better. But there is no doubt for single units, for one fully bridge on one side and so on, you can easily use it and you're going to be very precise. And this is what we have done. So you have your scan flag in place, which is on the digital photo you guys are seeing here. And then you have the scan and the flag on the scan. And now you can work in-house. You can send to a laboratory. In this case, I designed once again. And I have, for instance, the laboratory producing my restorations. Now, one thing that it's important when one talks about the scan bodies and scan flags or whatever is the name one would like to give is be careful because most of them are made out of PMMA, polymer. It's very common that people place them and they try to really tighten them up too much. If you do it, you're going to strip it. This is one picture that Jonathan Ferencz provided me with, which shows a stripped scan flag. When a scan flag is stripped, the position will be a little bit off. And if the position is off and you scan, it's going to be off, crown comes, and then you say that technology doesn't work. No, it does. So we have some tricks and some ideas that if you can use, for instance, scan bodies that has a metal attachment on it, that would engage with a metal component, thumbs up, you can type because it's going to be titanium. But most of the scan flags, they are pure PMMA. Be careful and also check with the manufacturer how often you need to change your scan flag. If you use the scan flag for 10 times, maybe you should replace it. Just be careful because you can scan things out of the correct position. So then you transfer the information. What you guys are appreciating here is on the left side is the scan flag for stroma and the scan flag on the scan, and then they are lined up. So when you do the lined up, you go for the design. In this case, I decided just to copy the neighbor tooth. Very simple to do it. This is not new. Then you select the material that you're going to do. In this case, I was willing to use the abutment link in Emax crown straight directly to the abutment link. And the cementation, when the crown is made and is finished, here you can have a little hint on the cementation. I sent the crown to be fabricated in 2 different laboratories. One was in the US, the other one was in Brazil, just to see if I would have any discrepancy on sending files from different places and how they work. And of course, the STL was a single STL that I sent for both companies. So a stroma component is the stroma link. It's called variable base. And then you just check it, get this in position. And after that, we're going to go for the cementation process. I use Ivoclar products, which is, I like this etch and prime. I'm just getting used more and more to do it.
But again, for a crown, I don't see any problem because you have enough retention. You use that, so you apply and then you rinse you apply for 20 seconds and then rinse, and you're ready for the cementation. Very straightforward, very simple process and straightforward until you get to the end of the result. Finishing the cementation then, when the cementation is obtained, you're going to go and place in the patient's mouth and you take an x-ray to check. A lot of people have asked me, Nelson, wouldn't you try in first? Of course I do. You place the abutment link and you try in if the crown is on the right position. But the cementation, I perform the cementation outside. Because if I have done everything correct, if my scan flag is on the right position, there is no reason for me to cement this restoration intraorally. Because as you know, those links or viral base, in this case is trauma, that is a edge that would make the restoration fit in one single position. And that really helps significantly the whole process. So then what you can see is a resembled crown. So one side matched to the other one because I copy the shape of the second premolar and I just match to the first premolar. Nice work done, very fast, and as you can see, the shape and the dimensions, of course, very depends on the case, but you can be very successful using machines to provide a decent work for your patient. Here is just before and after. The shade was taken based on the canine A3, and then we were able to match the A3 shade for the patient. Some other ideas and some other different guides, and I will show you right now, which belongs to this company. So you scan your patient and send for design. This is what I call tubular. You see, that depends on how you design. If you have a software like Implant Studio, which the one that I like, is you have a possibility to open windows. You can open windows as long as you do not make the guide weak. As long as you open up with cautions and make sure that the windows are in the strategically positioned for you to see what you're doing. So here is just one example. I scanned the patient and I sent. In this case, I did flapless. Flapless implant placement. Regardless if I do flapless or if I open a flap, I guide all the implants I'm placing nowadays. There is a simple reason. There is no reason to not do so. That's the major point. People ask me about doing this flapless, if it is precise. Well, it needs some improvements, I would say. It looks precise, but you don't see what you have gotten. So if you needed to torque a little bit more, if there is one thread that could be placed a little deeper, you don't see it. But people, some professionals are doing it now more often. I did in this case, as you can appreciate here, but I would rather now do open flap and I place the guide. Regardless, open flap guide is the way that I'm working nowadays, even for single restorations. Here is one case that I would like to share with you that involved complete denture. And this patient, I have the permission of the patient to show, of course, and this is how he came. And immediately what I do is I design the patient using the Smile design. If someone would like to get more information about this Smile design, just go for the last webinar that I have presented here. So you come and give some idea of what would be the ideal proportion for this patient. And those numbers are very important for me. Although you are not seeing papilla, you are not seeing anything for me, what I would like to see is the alignment of the lower lip, how this would fit, and how is the proportion of this tooth would help me in giving that information to produce my denture. Take an impression or scan it. So edentulous scanning is improving significantly, and here is one very nice scan that I have performed. This doesn't happen that often. Could be a little bit of doing more and more for scanning and maybe some patches which I don't like to do. So I would rather for edentulous patient for complete denture, when you are planning to place implants, take an impression. Take an impression and scan the impression. In this particular case, I did a scanning of the impression, but I also get the patient a bite from the existing denture, even keeping the cross bite, I would say, on the front area. I kept it because that's how the denture was. So I use it and I scan it, and then I lined this scanning that you guys are seeing with the bite scanning with the impression scanning. And I sent to the lab for design and manufacturing. So what I did was, of course, using sophisticated software here, using evidence software. Now I'm using the tree-shape complete denture software, which is very intuitive and a lot of options that you can use. So you send for fabrication of the complete denture, and then the denture with the node of the milling strategy here involves maybe 6 files for milling. I am not going over cost of this right now, but it's something that is feasible to do now nowadays. And then when you do it, you have the design and the complete denture that you have proposed. Here is the patient in the beginning. Here is the patient at the end. And then I do a smile design to see if I am at least close to some of the proportion that I have proposed. Here is the photo of the beginning, and then if I replicate the design on the other side, as you can see, you can really enhance and improve significantly the way that you're producing your digital denture. I am not discussing digital denture here. I'm just showing what is really possible to do. But what is important here is when you have a dentulous patient for placing implants, we first do a nice and decent complete denture. That's what I do. I don't go and place implants and start from there. It depends on the philosophy of work. I'm not here to discuss that. Do a nice denture, do a nice complete denture, and I did that using the digital environment. Printing is taking over. We have now more printed restoration coming along. But anyways, this is what I have done. So here you have the implant planning coming because I have the denture, right? I have the CBCT, right? And then I have the scan, right, of the tissue. What I will do is I will overlay all these files to design my restoration. This is how the softwares are developing. So I have the denture. And in my case, as I did digital denture, the only thing I did was ask for the STL of that denture. So I have the STL in my hands. I have the CBCT, and I have the intraoral scan of the dentulous patient or an impression. Then what you do is you overlay all this package and you go for the design, the implant placement based on the existing denture. Bingo! There is no reason now to be worried about not doing the right thing. So you design your guide, as you guys appreciate here on the dentulous. I can just move those videos here very fast if you want to see the video. Is a colleague of mine, Felipe, is a partner, and Raquel Chiari, who helped me on the case. And then you just position your guide on the patient, and you go, in this case, flapless. Again, flapless is still a question mark in my head. People ask me also, Nelson, but all this you're talking about, if you're using guide and so on, it will have some cost that sometimes can really not match with the way that I work. Well, it's known that guide surgery is becoming much more cost efficient than just thinking on the cost itself of the guide, because you have much more precision and you can speed up the work and you can make your patient feel comfortable. And in some cases, you can do flapless, regardless of the system you decide to use. Here I'm using this a company from Brazil, Conexão, which I like some of the components. But anyways, you place implants. So guide is still initial cost. So the investment here has some impact, yes. But along the way, it pays back. It depends on the philosophy of work you're doing. So my advice is guide as much as you can because it helps. If you want to open the flap, guide as well. Because your implants are going to be much better positioned, not a doubt. And there is no reason nowadays to not do it, as printing is becoming so cheap and you can really do it nicely. Again, just coming up with the question, should we punch it or should we not do a flapless? Here is the final aspect of the surgery, and here is the complete denture. That complete denture you guys have seen with the O-rings inside. One can ask, Nelson, why don't you do a hybrid for this patient? Yes, we are doing a hybrid because the story here did not finish. Why we are doing a hybrid? Because we strongly believe that from a complete denture, the way that I have produced, I can easily change the same file and make a hybrid. And this is going to be the next story I'm going to be telling all of you very soon. So it's the final case that I'm presenting here to you, how we started, how we finish, and you have the patient, as I have showed this picture already, with the denture now with 6 O-ring components inside. Could it be an equator? Yes, you can use equator. Could it be something else? Yes. Could you cut the palate off? Yes, you can cut the palate off if you want to. So in my case, I decided just to go and have the O-rings for now, but I'm just changing the whole patient treatment to hybrid, or maybe not. And why? Well, one problem in hybrids is cleaning. One problem in hybrid is cleaning. When you have an option of having a very tight complete denture in a patient's mouth, and the patient can take it off and clean it, they prefer to clean it because they feel uncomfortable sometimes, and they keep returning to the office at least once a month, or in some cases once in a couple of months. Because if you don't do the cleaning, if you don't unscrew the whole component and put it back on, it's not going to be cleaned. We know that for a fact. This is a lot of publications. I'm not here to discuss about publications, but I'm here just to show what is what I believe and what I think is feasible to be done. We are writing more and more about those cases. We are writing more information for people that they can feel confident to use all this process. And again, guided processes makes a much better dentistry for everybody. I know we have very skilled professionals on the implant business that don't need guide. They are so precise. They are very good on it. But my idea in all the work that I developed is to really reach out the mass, the majority of people. So if you can guide it, although there is an initial cost which is questionable, if this cost is really very high, you know, compared to the safe side of the surgery you're doing, compared to the speed of the surgery you're doing, because you drill very fast, you drill on the right spot, and then you place the implant based on a well-designed treatment plan. So that's what I think, that's what I share with people. I would like to everybody do the same type of dentistry. Based on guides, I'm going to push a little bit the envelope here, which goes off for the process. I have one question here. Why cut the palate off? Well, some patients, they don't like the palate because of the thickness of the palate. They would like to take the palate off. They'll answer the question. So I don't cut, but I have some patients that they have asked me to cut the palate because they would feel much more comfortable. This is one of the questions that came up. I will try to answer more questions as I go with the presentation. So let's think together in different ways. So I have this initial slide for you: less intervention and more preservation. Of course, this depends on how people see implant therapy and how the implant therapy would be successful. I guide all the surgeries that I'm doing now, all of them, singles and so on. There is no reason for not doing it. And then I guide it. So less intervention and more preservation. We are facing a time where more teeth are being kept. When I show this initial slide for you, I know that we have several dental work to be done, to be taken care of this patient. But there is one infection on the blue arrow shows us here on the top. So we have a abscess that is coming out and needs some intervention. Of course, we need to change this restoration. There is some issues on this premolar on this side and so on. But anyways, this is what really needs to be taken care of urgently. And of course, we did it in a combination of a temporization, a better temporization for this patient. So the X-ray shows us that situation here. So we knew that this is coming out from a unsuccessful apicoectomy done in the past using amalgam here now. So what we decide to do is, it's not everybody that can do this type of surgery, right? So why don't we just go and do a guided apiectomy, as we are now in a time where the software allows us to do so much work, and I'm working hard, especially with the TreeShape, that they can develop more and more concepts on guiding processes and guiding procedures. Why don't we just do a guided apiectomy? And this, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm going to be sharing with you, CBCT, scan of the patient. Then you go and you design a guide to reach out the apical component of the tooth right off where it should. So this would help us significantly. One can see, Nelson, I see this too thick, right, on the buccal side. Yeah, this was the first one we have done. But I would like to share that with you, because this will really lead you guys to think on the strategy of scanning several times, on the strategy of using the implant planning as much as you can, on the strategy of combining all this to benefit your patient. So then you go and you drill the patient, you do a little cut, and if I can just go back here, and even us now are designing a scalpel guided spot. Wow. So I'm trying here to combine a scalpel to be guided in cut, and then I would like to also drill on the right spot. So see what my brain is together with my colleagues. I have Lucas Maia, who is an endo guy, plus Vinicius Machado from SCAN, a lot of other fellows that are helping us on doing this work, which is making everybody secure to develop and to do their surgery. See, here is the open wound. Then you go for sealing. This is an endo sealing. As you can see, you can really reach right off the apex based on the drill. Then after you really block the apex, then you come with the bone, then you graft it, you suture it, and you have your apiectomy just waiting for the 90-day healing process. Why I'm showing it is because I believe in guiding processes in dentistry. I do believe on that. And I think doing that, we're going to do a much, much better dentistry for everybody. That's my belief. So from the beginning, from the scanning, from the smile design, from the implant studio, from the restoration design, now we are even going beyond and getting apiectomy, for instance, being guided, and we are improving it. And companies such as TreeShape and other companies are really pushing very hard to develop more and more software that could help us on making dentistry better for everybody and making us dentists being able to handle cases and being more profitable and getting more versatility in our office on a daily basis. What else? Well, I'm going to open up here. I have some questions that I will try to answer those questions. Let's see here. There's several questions. I have answered that. Why cut the palate? I cannot see the video anymore. This is more stuff. Can you please tell us indications on implants? I have one question here, several questions. It's very difficult here. Have you ever encountered any surprise of having no enough bone, and what did you do about it? Well, yes. So
That's why I always recommend open flap, not flapless. So I've been really advocating open flap type of approach, not flapless, because you can have places where the bones are not present, then you can torque a little more, you can deepen the implant a little bit, and you can graft on site. Well, I would like to thank you all for the time you have spent. This is a great time for me. I try to cover as much as I can. Thank you so much. Have a good night. You can email me. You can send me some message on the Instagram, and I will be more than happy to share some of my experience to all of you. I hope this was productive. Have a good night. Bye-bye.